She created and publishes the Catholic Daily Planner and speaks regularly at conferences and events, and she is the co-author of Mater Amabili's Catholic Charlotte Mason-style curriculum. Michele's planners and a variety of additional items are at her vendor table out in the vendor hall today, or you could find her at michellequigley.com. Michele and her husband Tim live in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, where they homeschool 5 of their children that are still at home and manage their small publishing business and their garden and keep chickens on their small suburban homestead. Michele's talk is Time Management for Christian Mothers. Let's welcome Michele.
Sometimes it just doesn't work that way. You know, as a mother of 10 children, I can tell you this. If I had started out with only my first two, and then God hadn't sent me more children, I would have thought I was an expert on parenting. I would have thought, you know, you really need to get control of that child. And then God sent me number 9, who was only 8 years old, who just threw all that out the window, and everything I thought I knew, I didn't know. So it's kind of the same thing. You just have to see, yeah, that might work for you, but doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for me. No system works, however, without implementing it. Okay? And that's a really important point, you know, because in reality, you're not managing time. You can't manage time. Time happens whether or not we do anything about it. You're managing your actions in that space of time that you have to get done what you need to get done. So it's actually about what you do. And a to-do list that you don't do is really pointless. And it causes a lot of stress internally because it's out there. Either it's on a piece of paper or it's on your computer and it's in your brain. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And that can cause a lot of stress. So we're going to talk about how to maybe tackle that a little bit. First and foremost, though, before any of this comes into play, I'll tell you one thing that I've learned is that you have to actively nourish your interior life. That is the first thing you have to do if you want to be able to effectively manage your time. You have to pray. And you have to find time to be alone with God. Because growing in your relationship with Christ is vital to being able to effectively manage your time in your life. And what that looks like is going to vary according to the season of life that you're in. I don't have any babies anymore. My youngest is 6 1/2. So, you know, I'm not up at night with anybody, and that's a little bit different. But it's something you can't discard. You really can't. I know it's tempting to think, well, I'm really too busy for regular prayer time, but I find the busier I am, the more prayer that I need. The more I really need that prayer time. And when I neglect it, sometimes I do, sometimes I get up right away and I'm like, no, I gotta get this done, I gotta get this done. I always regret that. Always do. And yet still, I do it. You know, why do we do that? But also too, one of the things that's helped for me is changing my thinking on it sometimes. Not so much that it's something that I have to do. I realize this is something that I get to do. I get to spend that time with our Lord. I get to have that one-on-one with Him. You know, and it's really important. If prayer is a struggle for you, pray about it. Ask God to give you the grace to desire it, and in my experience, He will. But even if He doesn't, you just do it. And also, too, you know, I know there have been times when I thought, well, there's just no way. You know, I have a tiny baby, I have toddlers, I have this, I have that. And I remember one time in particular when I had a child that was, I think, a 3-year-old. And he had to lay down with him to get him to go sleep, so he wouldn't stay in bed. Anybody know that one? And I realized, so I was like, Lord, I need some time for prayer. Well, I realized that was the perfect time for me. It took about 15 minutes for him to fall asleep. So I could just lay there with him, and I could pray, and he was still, and he fell asleep. So you have to kind of get creative sometimes, you know. Sometimes the end of the day, now do it in the beginning of the day. But really, I have found it true in my own life that God never allows my duties to overwhelm me so much that I can't find Him. And when I've been able to find that time, it's always been my duty that I haven't been able to find it because I'm allowing other things to encroach on my time. If I have time to look at Facebook, I have time to pray. If I have time to check my email, I have time to pray. So, that's me. Work that out. So pray daily, and the first thing if possible, it is a good way to start the day, but I know sometimes that just, when you've been up all night with a baby or whatever, that's hard. You're just trying to get everybody corralled or whatever. I have more time than that now, but there have been times when I didn't. But adding to prayer, I would also just suggest, if possible, that you begin journaling. Now, I was never a journaler. I didn't like the idea of journaling. What's the point? I don't understand. Till someone suggested it to me in dealing with the grief of losing my mother. My mother died a year ago, almost a year ago Friday, Thursday. And she said, just start journaling, just start writing. And I did, and it's been very helpful to me. And it's become a prayer journal, and I write about anything and everything. Journaling and prayer for me now go hand in hand. My journal is a prayer journal, and in many ways, many ways, I hear God speaking to me, speaking to my heart through my journaling. As I bring out my concerns and my desires, and I pray for people, and I'm just able to see things more clearly, mentally, emotionally. It's been a huge benefit for me, absolutely. All things that God understands better than we do, such as our faults and our defects, all those things can come out. And that if we can bring that to God, because we all have things that we struggle with, and we all have things that we're working on, And the time management thing, this ties in, because there's a reason why you're having trouble managing some area, So bring that to God. Ask Him to help you see what areas need addressing, and maybe what things that you are focusing on that you think are important, but He doesn't think is important. It's going to help you to get some clarity. Grab a notebook, start writing. I get those composition books at the dollar store. Yes, pen and paper, not computer screen. Try not to use your computer, and resist the urge to get online before you pray or you journal, unless it's an emergency, kind of thing. I don't want to check the weather. It's not worth it. It's distracting. I tend to go outside and sit on my patio, even in the freezing cold weather. I put my down coat on, I put a down blanket around me, and I sit down. And they started calling me the bird league. I have a bird feeder, and I know all the birds, and they come. You can't do anything, and they come late. I got boys. I got 7 boys, so anything I can pick on, 5 of them are grown, so you can imagine what it's like in my house. But white paper. I'm a big advocate for paper, especially for journaling. Why do I stress writing by hand? And I publish a paper planner. There's all kinds of wonderful electronic devices out there, and I use them too. I do. But I'll tell you why I think paper is important. Writing by hand is incredibly beneficial. Research has shown that the hand has a unique relationship to the brain. When it comes to composing thoughts and ideas, brain scans have shown that sequential finger movement, the strokes you make to form a letter, activate massive regions involved in thinking, language, and working memory, which is why if you're homeschooling and you're not having your kids do handwriting, you need to start doing it. Because it really is important to motor development. They have shown that for children who are learning to write and learning to read, forming the letters is very beneficial for them in terms of understanding that letter, and they have much better memory and recognition on those letters than if they typed it on a keyboard. I still use some electronic games, that's fine, but we try to keep the balance on. My kids have to do all their schoolwork at the table, writing it out by hand. They do some games and some courses online for my older kids, but I'm big on handwriting. Again, it's those strokes when you're forming the letter. They activate those massive regions in your brain. They're thinking, language, and working memory. Working memory. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. That's kind of like RAM, your working memory. I'm going to talk about that in a moment and why that's important. And one study that I read showed that people write words faster and express more ideas when writing by hand versus using my keyboard. And I know that's true for me. I'm a fairly fast typist for a peg variety. I never properly learned to type, and then, you get so used to being on the computer that I'm pretty fast, but it's not very efficient in terms of how I type. But at the same time, I don't have the same ability. Like, I write my talk, I write out by hand. It's different. I don't, it's the brain thing. I don't understand it exactly, but I encourage you to use paper, and I encourage you to have children use paper. There's another thing that I read that really struck me, is that there's also an intimacy that's implied in handwriting, a familiarity that frankly is lost with type. Now this really struck me because my mother, who had passed last year, she was an excellent typist. She learned to type in school, she learned secretary school, she could really, really type. And I remember as a child watching her fingers just fly across the typewriter. But she also wrote a lot of things by hand, and she had beautiful, beautiful handwriting. And last week, I was going through her sewing box, which I inherited because I'm the only one in my sisters that sews, and I came across this little paper that she had directions written on it, that she had just written down something in her handwriting. And I felt an immediate connection to that, a comfort from it that I wouldn't have gotten from a typewritten note, because it was her handwriting, written in her hand. And even if it was something I knew she could type, it wouldn't have been the same. And that struck me, because since my mother has passed, my kids have said to me, especially my older kids, we have to go through this someday. You're going to put us through this. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't help that. God. But I go, okay, well, that's another one of those things. You can leave the cards that you write and those sorts of things. They become very precious to you when you lose your parent. But also, there's a calmness, I have to say, a calmness about writing by hand that I find tends to really calm my mind, and it gives me clarity. If you've never journaled, I highly recommend it. This is a little side note. You didn't think I'm crazy, because when I first read this, I thought I was crazy too. A friend recommended to me to journal, and then I was reading this book, and they mentioned journaling, and they said, as a side note, a lot of people find they start losing weight when they journal. And I was like, right, okay. I'm just going to tell you this. I lost 20 pounds, I didn't do anything. I had a bad ankle. I hadn't been able to exercise all winter. The one thing I did differently was I started journaling. It's worth a try. Doesn't need to be written down necessarily, although if your memory's like mine, I would recommend you write it down. I tend to keep a notebook handy in my purse, although I've just recently started using Evernote, which is great because it syncs with my phone, my computer, and my Kindle, and I can, if I put a note, it's at all those places too. Anything like that. Evernote's free, so it's nice. Evernote, it's called. Evernote. Yep. And it's available for like any device, which is nice too. Word of caution on planning. Don't spend more time planning than implementing a plan. You're laughing because you've done it. I've done it. People who sometimes spend a little more time reading about homeschooling than or reading about planting a garden and planting their garden and not really getting the garden in. Yeah, that's one of those things that we have to work on. G.K. Chesterton said that anything worth doing is worth doing badly. I remember when I first heard that quote, I thought, what? Well, in other words, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, or in some cases, the good enough. I think one of the reasons sometimes that we spend more time planning than implementing is that we have this tendency towards perfectionism, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a few minutes. But it is definitely an issue. Bring it to prayer. Okay, so I find in most cases doing something imperfectly and having it actually be done is better than not having it be done at all. And that doesn't mean we don't strive for excellence. Absolutely, but there's a flip side to that too, because often the reason that people don't manage their time well is that they wait till the last minute, and that's because payoff because we tell ourselves internally, well, I could have done a better job if I had more time, if I had waited until the last minute. So this is good enough, you know. And so that's one of the things that I've always struggled with that I have to work on. I have to tell you, I got my talk written, and I had anything to do. I'm like, it's not time to leave. I'm ready to go. It's a very strange feeling. What do I do? You know, you can improve. You can work on this. And you've all heard the saying that grace builds on nature. Well, it absolutely does. You know, you need to find your strengths, try to discern what your strengths are. Some people don't know what their strengths are and what your weaknesses are. Because if there's certain areas of weakness for you, and it's not something that you can easily overcome, then you need to find a way to work around it too. But realize too that habits that we form can be incredibly helpful. And with grace, you can grow in something that isn't natural to you. I have never been a morning person. I like to stay late and sleep in. It was always my way. You know, I could be very productive late in the day, into the evenings, and I was fine with that. I was kind of thought, well, I wonder if I could get more done if I was getting up early or whatever, but, you know, it was fine. My husband worked a lot of different shifts over the years. He was in the military, and he was an MP, so he would work rotating shifts, and then he worked a factory job for a while where he worked rotating shifts. And now he, for the last almost 3 years now, he's had a regular Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30 job, which we really never had before. And I don't have any babies. Like I said, my youngest is 6 and a half, and so he gets up in the morning, I get up with him, and I've been doing that. I suddenly become a morning person. I wake up before him. I wake up at 5:30, sometimes 6. I get out of bed. I like getting out of bed. I know, it's crazy. If you're not a morning person, you're going, what? Really? I just tell you this, I promise, as a morning person, I will not look down on you if you're not a morning person. Because you all know, there's that naturally morning person thing, and those of us who are naturally night people get this. You stay up too late, just went to bed earlier, things will go better. But you can't sleep, you can't sleep. Now, I have a bunch of older kids who are night people. So, you know, I'm sleeping and I'm hearing all this noise. Apparently the people above us in our hotel last night were night people. That was 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. So, but the funny thing is about when you start to become a morning person and you form this habit, my body didn't care that I didn't fall asleep till 3 a.m. It was 6:30, I woke up. You know, I would have probably woke up sooner, but we had the curtains closed. It was a little dark in there. You know, didn't care. Time to get up. You can get enough sleep too bad, get up. Not something I'll take a nap during the day, but you can change, make a habit of it. It's not going to be necessarily easy, but at the same time, if it's something that you're really interested in doing, whether it be getting more exercise, or make sure I plan for dinner every night this month, or sleep, or I'm just planning for dinner today, whatever, you know, you can do it. Okay, so how do we form a plan? I have an acronym that I came up with, I like to use, called RFB, and that stands for Rhythm, Flexibility, and Balance. Let me see when I'm on time. Okay. Years ago, when my family was growing and we started homeschooling, I was struggling to keep up with things. My husband suggested that I needed a schedule. Now, I'm a very right-brained, creative, free-spirited kind of girl. More so then than I am now, I have to admit. I have to tell you that word schedule really kind of struck terror into my heart. To me it sounded like a straight jacket of drudgery. And I was homeschooling my kids because I wanted our days to be free and flowing and happy and calm, you know. My children are creative, and I actually believe everyone is creative, to some degree or another, but that's another talk. And creative people, we need time to create. We need time to let ideas percolate, and time to look around, and time to be inspired. 9 o'clock, my phone goes off, plays bells, and we come together and we pray. Wherever everybody is, they stop right there and pray. It goes off again at noon, we come and we pray the Angelus. Goes off again in the evening, we come together and we do evening prayer. That is only something I've done in the last 2 years. And I struggled for years to have a regular routine of a prayer time, and it's just worked for us, you know. But letting go of the terror, the idea that I have to do something, and instead just saying, this is the rhythm that we have going. This is the look. If we're out and we're at a homeschool function and that time comes and goes because we're doing something, it's okay. You know, we'll do it later. It's fine. But we do stay with that. And that's where flexibility has to come in. Now, where am I at here? Take a few minutes, though. I want you to take a few minutes and think about your family and its rhythm. Think about, and you don't have to do this right now, but when you go home, you know, when you're sitting down to do your plan, okay, what are we doing that's working? What's working well? And you want to focus on that first, because it can be discouraging to look at everything that needs to be done and everything that needs to change. So look at what's working and what's going well. Do that first. And then ask yourself, well, what needs work? And then, how do you handle surprises? Do you get the things done that need to be done? And if you're not getting the things done that need to be done, ask yourself, why not? Do you get the things done that you want to do? Because that's a separate list. Sometimes they're the same thing, but there's, you know, you have to make dinner, you have to do laundry, you have to homeschool. Those things are that have to, but there's also things that you want to do. If you're on Pinterest, there's all kinds of things you want to do. Now, how do you manage? And that's because if you're a creative person, and me, I'm like, I have this drive, you know, to create things. I like to sew, I like to draw, all of that kind of thing. You know, so there has to be space for that. There has to be time for that. And if I give myself space and time for that, I'm a much nicer mommy. I'm a much nicer wife. I'm a much happier person, you know. And this is how God created me to be. So I have to find a way to nurture that without becoming too much in that direction and foregoing the things that need to be done. But I truly, if you have small children and you haven't done this yet, I just have to say this as a mother who has 5 grown children and 5 children at home. Teach your children how to take care of themselves. Teach them how to use the washing machine, teach them how to use the dryer, teach them how to cook, and how to clean up after themselves. All of my boys have said to me, I am so glad you taught me this, because they've had roommates, they've had people that they live with in an apartment who have no clue how to do these things. And they're frustrated. Teach them how to do chores. And the side benefit of it is you don't have to do everything. You know, it helps to be able to say, I got this situation going on, or I have somebody, I have 2 children that are special needs, 2 children that have type 1 diabetes, which used to be juvenile diabetes. Sometimes we have emergencies with that. You know, Good Friday I ended up in the emergency room with one of my children because they got dehydrated. It's a very, very serious thing for a diabetic. That I have to say to my 16-year-old, I need you to get dinner on the table. And I know that she can, you know, but you have to train them. And you have to actually train them, you know. Now I tend to just sort of throw them in the fire. I throw them into the deep end of the pool. But at the same time, if you do that, you can't get mad at them when they don't do it right. You know, you just come alongside and say, oh. So there has to be balance in it there. But I also like to let them, you know, just because I cut carrots that way doesn't mean you have to cut carrots that way. There's kind of a funny story. My mother always shredded her carrots for salad, and we have like shredded pieces. So I I remember something when I'm out, I can put on my phone and it's on my computer for later, that kind of thing. I use my planner a lot for the big things. One of the reasons I like to use electronic organizers for to-do lists is because it is demoralizing to have to write that to-do list on the next day that you didn't do the day before. Electronically, it's just still there. It's not as bad. I'm not thinking about having to write it again. Same time, there is also something about things I really want to remember writing that by hand because it sticks more in my memory. But there's also programs, if you have an iPad or you have a smartphone, there's programs now that you can write with your hand, which actually they have shown with children, especially forming letters, does have the same effect as handwriting, so that's an idea too. Also use the memo thing, you know, if I'm somewhere where I don't have my hands free or can't, I don't know about you, but I'm getting old. I'm like this. I can't see, you know, so, oh, I can just key into it, you know, that's nice, that works really well. I have to remember to listen to those memos, okay? I have been sent to my email, that whole file. Oh, I actually listened to that, there might be some really good stuff on there, I don't know. Yeah. So, determine your family's rhythm, pray about it, think about it, and make some notes. Flexibility. Is the answer to your time management woes as simple as getting things done? You know, will you be happier if you get more done? Maybe. Will your family be happier? Well, does the stress of trying to get it all done turn you into a drill sergeant barking orders? Always just say this as a little aside. If your house is been let go for too long, and you really just want to get things in order, throw a party. Throw a party in like a week. Trust me, you will be painting walls. What's even better is schedule a weekly or bi-weekly or bi-monthly gathering so that consistently people are coming to your bathrooms will stay clean. You'll be cleaning on a regular basis. At least your main area will be clean. I'm telling you, it works. There's nothing like having company to make you clean your house. At the same time, we don't want this to be an occasion for sin. So there does need to be that sense of, okay, I'm going to get this done, but don't want to stress everybody else out in the process. Because something that we really need to remember, productivity is not a virtue. That's not to say that it can't be virtuous, but sanctity does not consist in the works we do, but in how we respond to God's invitations. You get a whole lot done when you're a really nasty person. That is not what God has in mind for us. Lack of vision might be people like that. We have a duty to God and to our families, and justice demands that we fulfill that duty. But love holds primacy of place. And productivity has to be in the service of love. What's the point otherwise? Getting things done and nobody's happy and family, you know, togetherness is just not fun. You know, so we have to find that balance. Now, I found that stress tends to reveal character, and I don't know about you, but I'm just constantly amazed at the amount of opportunities that God gives me to see where my character is. It just keeps writing to me. It's just so merciful that way. Really, really. You laugh, but it's true, because if you didn't do that, I would just think, hey, I don't need to work on this. That's what spouses are for, too. And children, especially as they become adults. They're really good at helping you to see where things need work. So love. But now, admittedly, love in the moment might mean getting dinner on the table, you know. But that's where plan can be really beneficial. Things come up, emergencies, or, you know, things that need your attention right now. The baby needs fed, his diaper needs changed, the dinner needs to be made. That's where having a plan is really helpful. I have a meal plan, and I have already shopped, and the things are in place. This is ideal. When I do that, things go so well. Why don't I do that on a consistent basis? I love the whole meal plan thing. I'm going to get there. I am. I sell meal planning booklets at my table. You know, it works really well if you do it, I'm telling you. And then sometimes, like I said, you could just say to your daughter, it's in the fridge, this is what we're doing, can you get it going for me? Or can you change the baby so I can get this done? Usually they take the option of making dinner. Now, I want to stress here that And be flexible, you know, because again, if love has primacy of place, sometimes you throw it out the window. It's not going to hurt anything. It's okay. You can order pizza. My husband wouldn't mind ordering pizza every night. He loves pizza. I get tired of it. But if you have small children, I think that can be especially important. You just don't know what's going to happen day in and day out. And any system of time management that you adopt, any system that you build, it has to be flexible enough for your family. And while still being structured enough to work for your family and however much you need. I know what that looks like for my family, but I don't know what that looks like for your family. You have to be the one to determine it. You have to be the one to figure that out because you know your family better than anyone else. You and God. And God knows what you need, so you want to discern that through prayer. And balance. Don't be a slave to the system. The system is your slave. You work the system. You don't let the system work you. You make it work for you, flows with the rhythm of your family, you stay flexible, and you always put love in it. That's the whole rhythm, flexibility, and balance. Okay? That's it in a nutshell. Is that you make it work for you according to your family's rhythm, that you stay flexible, and you put love first. Life is not orderly or perfect. It isn't, and it's not going to be. So get that out of your head right now. I'm telling you, I've been married for almost 29 years, and a mom for 27 years. It's never been orderly or perfect. Just never got there. It's not going to get there. That's how it is. It's messy, it's chaotic. You know, some days are really nice and orderly and wonderful, and you think to yourself, oh, yeah, that day just look at this. This is so wonderful. Then we wouldn't be able to go on holiness because things would be too easy. It's not going to change. You just have to manage it better. You have to find out how to manage it, and it will become more fulfilling. You know, I really did struggle with this whole thing. My husband's like, you want to get scheduled, you want to do this, but no. But the more I was able to corral things a little bit better, find ways to manage our time, the more I was able to just really relax and enjoy what was going on. Okay, a couple of things I want to go over. Always get asked if I have a book to recommend, and one of the books that I read recently I'm going to recommend is called, funny enough, Getting Things Done by David Allen. Because I think he has some really great guidelines and principles. And if you Google it, there's a whole bunch of discussion on it and everything. Now he talks about this, and a lot of other places talk about that. The 4 Ds. Have you ever heard of the 4 Ds? You're dealing with your stuff. Take email, for instance. You need to look at it with the 4 Ds in mind, which is either do it, and do it if it takes 2 minutes or less. Delegate it, defer it, or dump it. What's that mean? Do it. If it takes 2 minutes or less, do it. Somebody needs a quick reply. You know? I have this thing about my inbox. I do like things to be neat and orderly. I go through and I try to deal with everything. There's probably maybe 10 messages in my inbox right now because I cannot stand having an inbox. But I have friends who have thousands and thousands of emails. You're never going to go through them. And then what do you end up doing? Delete. And you may have missed something important. You don't know. But it's too much. It's overwhelming when you get to that point. So you go through your email. Have it be a set point. If you're checking your email all throughout the day, that can be really distracting. But have a set time. I'm going to go through my inbox. Boom, boom, boom. If it takes 2 minutes or less, do it. If you can't do it right now, or it's not right for you to do, consider someone that you might be able to everything doesn't have to be perfect all the time. Really, it's okay. Let it go. It's not that big a deal. Attention to detail is great, depending on what you're doing, but make sure it's focused in the right direction. I understand the temptation, the need for things to be just so sometimes, but you know, that becomes a time management trap. It can make you really grouchy, because if you live in a house with children, something's always going to be wrong. You know, you get the floor swept, and get the laundry done for what? 10 seconds? Plus they have to do laundry, right? So once everybody's walking around naked, they're never going to get the laundry done. Another aspect of perfectionism is not delegating. Because you want to make sure things are done a certain way, you know, and you feel like you're the only one who can do it. Maybe that's true, maybe you're the only one who can do it the way that you like it done, but that doesn't mean you're the only one who can do it. So either you're going to have to allow yourself enough time to do the 1 million things that you really want to do and that only you can do really well, or, because that's not always an option, you're going to learn to accept your limitations and just let someone else help. And also keep in mind that by keeping all that, you're not letting other people have the opportunity and letting them grow. This is really hard for me to say, I am an older mother now. And I just can't believe that. I'm one of the older mothers. And I realized, you know, it's my responsibility to help the younger mothers. It's my responsibility to help them learn some of the things that I learned. And there were older mothers in my life that helped me to do that. But part of that is giving them things to do. You know, yeah, you might know more about what's going on in a certain situation, and you might be able to do that a little bit better, but bring them in. They have way more energy than I do anyway. It's the funniest thing. You have all these little kids who have way more energy. It's my age, and you're just like, yeah, I'm too tired. So, ask yourself. It's another perfectionism issue. Are you all or nothing? Either do it all right, or do it all well, or not to do any of it. All or nothing is a huge trap for time management and really for being productive in your life. Everything doesn't have to be all or nothing. Just do what you can do. And good enough is okay. Stop with the all or nothing thing. Second one is procrastination. Doing anything but what you need to be doing. Checking Facebook, checking email, something interesting. Oh, that's really cute. Just, what do I need to be doing? And the world is full of distractions, especially now. You know, we have our phones, we have all kinds of things going on. We have a lot of distractions. And we can really use that for procrastination. But there needs to be a balance between doing what needs to be done in a timely manner, and not, at the same time, you don't want to, as soon as something demands your attention, I'm going to tell you this right now. If you have a little sound that goes off when you get an email, turn that off. You don't need to know every time you get an email. Set a time to check your email, but not every email. You just wasted a few minutes and you pulled your distraction from something else. I get it. It's tempting. I really do. Just don't need to answer every email right when it arrives. Set a up the idea that you can. Plan, think about what's important. You need to decide what's most important, and then you arrange your life and your time around those things. And as moms, I know that some days everything feels like a priority, and it can be a struggle choosing between the good and the best. It's not always clear what should come first. And that's why I think it's very important that you think about the most important ahead of time so that you have a guide. Now, it's important to remember that what's a priority for one person isn't necessarily a priority for another person. And so you need to figure out what's good for you and then get it clear in your head. And lastly, don't compare. Don't compare yourself to families, don't compare yourselves to other people, compare yourselves to the saints. But even there, recognize, if your favorite saint is Saint Therese or Saint Teresa of Avila, they lived in a convent. They didn't have the same life as you. You can learn a lot from them, but at the same time, your life is different. They also didn't live in our chronological history. Sharing ideas is great, but don't compare yourself until you use a cliche. You really have to think outside the box, and you need to stop berating yourself for what you can't do. Figure out what you can do. There's some beautiful blogs out there. I have a blog myself, but recognize, please, if you're reading any of the mom blogs, you're seeing a snapshot of what is going on, a tiny little piece. And most of us, for good reason, are putting our best foot forward. I'm going to share my issues with everybody, partly because I want to protect my privacy and my children's privacy, but at the same time, nobody wants to hear about that. I want to hear about the good stuff, okay? But the good stuff isn't all the time. It's just a snapshot, so keep that in mind. Keep your system simple. Whatever you decide to do, keep it simple. Anything too complicated is likely to be abandoned pretty quickly. Index card files with all your meal plans or chores lists, it's great if that works for you. But if you're like me, out of sight is out of mind. So I can make a wonderful meal plan that sits in the index card box, and there it stays, because I don't look at it. I use sticky notes because they're right where I can see them. Simple. Then again, don't overuse them, because if you overuse them, you start being blind. You can't see them anyway. I take 10 minutes, after my prayer time, 10 minutes to plan my day. You can do it in the morning and in the evening. Usually I do both just so that I can have an idea of what's coming up next. Usually my husband will say what's on the agenda for this week or what's on the agenda for tomorrow. And then think about the 4 most important things you